who are still alive. So first we the Tape2 Buddha.
For those of you who here are copies, General is referring to the pages. For those of you who are in the class,
actually, I translate
those in the class, please put up your hand.
this text. It's written in Chinese, but we do I read the explicatory memorial. You can understand what's going on in the ceremony through this translation. I do my traditional way, so you can read that part. 개문 생사로 왕비 불초비가 명복의 파신장 법성이가 또 사생육도 미진주 사의 수만 반란 삼도 사경득 여장충 삼사생사 종고 지금 미오심언 나응면에 비비물려난가 초승 사바세계 대원사 근직 백일명명 천열양화이 신영청나무 진봉청 대성일로왕고탈마하살 오부부비일령불례 설지군명 대소량 정정공덕 신년숙한 은연분서 증약구리 승진전증 근수. So now page 8. So it's a really spirit. General remarks on meditation. I wrote down in the footnote, but anyway, the spirit dog and the star, 3 star means the name of the spirit, or Mr. or Mrs. 모령 생돈 생열본 명 생열분 오십장장유 모령 한해등 생열조이고 in silence. 도안은 현현시 청명명령 약야회등 돈증겁신 영멸기용 기홍미연 승불실력 장거까지 구차양단 수화묘공심호. Then let's skip the part and go to the page 10. And best is, as I told you, best is just a special preparation is needed. But anyway, its content is just purifying the whole spirit. I mean the death, the purifying their karma and their mind. Then maybe they got enlightenment, then go to anywhere they want. So there are many energetic things here, so many mantras and even the mudras, but you just know what I'm doing. So I started page 10, titled the best, and needing to take a best. I'm just leading the spirit to a special place. We prepare the water made by the insect, and special the water, and we cover by the screen, and we send to them as a gas chamber. 소총인도 일체인율금 우주원 유정금중 이계 도량해중 청명구. I just use through the mantras only once, but usually we recite the repeated 3 times. 정로 천옴 수지시 나짜리따라 나짜리따라 무라다예 살다다라 만나 하나하나 부가 일종 이백운시왕 기참도 역사생 금일청계 선노령수연 위구마 무격지는 오 바다모 수지사모 가래 자양기는 가라 오 수구지는 옴 손도리로 구고선가. So here you see many mantras. There's mantra for chewing the popular version is cleaning your mouth, and mantra that cleans and mantra that washes your face, and after that we need the crosses, so it's not the ordinary crosses, so we're providing the miraculous crosses and mantra of that, and then page 12. Mantra for giving crosses, and mantra for dressing, and mantra for adjusting the dress. So just namu samanta musa namu madana paru vijeka asu inor om bari mada pavarari sagajina Om Hara Prasade Sabaha Jagajjan Om Samanta Sadhana Padame. Now you purify the whole your body or spirit. So now the lead to the participate the offering ceremony. So coming from the base to the tender saint, that part. And so I do. So now arrive the special altar to prepare all the food and the fruits or the flowers. And now the Avalokiteshvara offerings are into the most important part. Oh, already 11:30. So I with the shoes. So then another saying, inviting the spirit. So I will skip all. And during the time, you see the page 13. Shwasti Avalokiteshvara, this means Avalokiteshvara manifest. Maybe you already saw she shows 10,000 hands. It means just more effectively help all people like that. So the Dharani is written in Chitta. It just modified the Sanskrit version, and we recite the Korean version. And after all the Heart Sutra, then we invited the solitary spirit, page 14, and we also offer the incense smoke. So I will skip all of them. Then the page 15. So during that time we just recite many mantras. We mantras for transformation of food, and offering sweet water, and also mantra of sea of milk. So we invite not only the spirit of death, but every time we invite the ancestors of the death, and also the many other spirits to listen all to the Dharma. So they need much more foods. So not you can see material foods, but we enlarged the whole foods by the Buddha's mantra. And then we recite the holy titles. So you see the page 15. Then the mantra for offering meal to spirit, and mantra for universal offerings, mantra for universal rewarding of merits. Page 16, the 10 types of Tathagata. After that, pure land practice. So it depends on the time. You can, recite Buddha's name 100 times or 1,000 times. It depends on the situation. So during that time, not only just recite the names, but some the chanting verses. So you can read later. Already time to go. So we need just a certain comment or criticism or any. So actually afternoon I will also present our tradition. So based on this text, so we have a chance to talk in detail more.
Thank you, and this morning's final stage is a discussion moderated by Dr. AliceChow. Dr. AliceChow is born and educated in Korea and the United States. She is a retired professor of women's studies and anthropology. Currently, she is working in advocacy work, research in violence against women as a human rights issue, particularly on 정신대, which is sex slaves drafted by Japan during the World War II. Please welcome Dr. AliceChow.
Thank you very much. I don't know too much about Buddhism, but I will just speak as a Korean woman in the late 60s. I don't know too much about Buddhism, but I have lived 67 years and lived in the States for 30-some years, and third generation Christian, and also feminist, and researcher and activist of women's issues, especially violence against women as human rights issue. And first I will talk, this is my perspective with all this background. I will talk about what that means to me and how I overcame through some personal experience as a feminist and also my illness, through my illness. I think everyone has to go through both life, death, and death is experience of death is unknown, not predictable, and also you have to face alone. And also fear of death is, as Professor Atkins said, non-being, fear of non-being. But fear of non-being for me as a Christian and Confucian, other Korean religious backgrounds, is more of a fear of separation from what you are and what the meaning of life was or is that you have right now. And until you face death, like I had cancer illness about 10-15 years ago, that you really don't think about the real meaning of life on this earth, and also meaning of what you're going through, like illness or suffering, or friendship or love. And it was time for me to make really evaluate or take inventory of my life by going back to my roots and my thought and my religion and family and other relationships. So I think our journey for truth or ultimate has to go through these different stages of life. But we are actually, or ultimately, or continuously seeking the truth of life. And truth of life, for me as a feminist and Christian, is not to separate from others by conflict, distrust, or hate, and so on. But we actually, have to come together by reconciliation, by understanding where each one is coming from, by accepting. This is maybe Buddhist way of accepting the situation or the person as he or she or it is first, and then create some kind of a wholesome self first and then create interdependent and meaningful relationship with those around you, including nature and other surroundings. So this may be more of a non-Western, non-Judeo-Christian tradition of my upbringing. That coming home or returning to original cause or original source or essence by interdependent, wholesome relationship. So even though I don't really understand the meditation part of the Zen Buddhist, we have so-called prayer, solitary prayer, but communal prayer, as well as solitary prayer in our Christian tradition, is to return to God or meeting God among God-like or children of God in some kind of a spiritual community called church or small groups within the church. So our life after that, or we call it returning to our home or God's kingdom, I believe as a Christian and as a feminist Christian that we have to establish peace and kingdom of God within yourself and on earth here and now before you will talk about anything hereafter. And because it's a continuation of journey and also enlightenment process, we call in Chinese the way. The way or journey or transformational process of both life, death, resurrection, or eternal life has to be integrated and experienced here and now within yourself and among ourselves before we can talk about preparation or facing the death or meaning of life and death. And for me, when I had cancer illness, my family and friends really didn't understand in the beginning, but I opened up my feelings and concerns, and in the beginning they tried to deny whatever I had. They say it's nothing, maybe it's not cancer. Doctor made mistakes. Even though I believed in doctors more than God, before this experience, I started to not believe in God and also, believe in doctors and also question to God, why me and so on. But after that experience, I found that the things that made me come through or overcome, all the pains and sufferings and doubts and anger and so on, or the relationship, my relationship with God through relationship with people around me. I couldn't experience God suddenly in the vacuum, but I could experience God's love through love and concern and other mixed emotions of those around me. So something spiritual has to be grounded on something materialistic or something, carnal or physical, before we can talk about, spiritual or something as kingdom of God. And for me, kingdom of God, call it kingdom of God, but anyway, some kind of heavenly place for us is when there is integration of everything on this earth and all the creatures as returning or to be in the state of original intention. Original intention of God's or anybody's creation of all the universe and the people and existence in the universe will, I am sure, very deeply meaningful and coexisting, peaceful kind of original intention of creation. So by returning to that original essence and original meaning of creation by all of us here and now and start at this moment, I think is the answer to all the fears of unknown and concerns about our life here and the hereafter. And the themes that occurred in different speakers were many, but one of them was something about giving. And they didn't use love or supernatural or anything like that. But giving in Buddhism, I'm sure, is giving yourself as some kind of a concerned human being to another human being. And we have something called in Christian religion, not called, but a passage in Gospels, that by giving up your life for others, that you gain life. And this is one of the paradoxical teaching of Jesus, who actually showed this example to us so that we can follow him. And giving up life in order to gain life seems to me is very, very common or running thread of both Buddhism and Christianity. The giving up life is that you give yourselves as you are today to the everything that is surrounding you, which needs your whole self. And then if you don't hold on to anything that is only concerning yourself, like worldly desires or basic needs of life, like making money and being happy and so on, that you actually lose your life because there is no meaning in that kind of life. So by living fully in essence of or purpose of your own creation, and then by giving up yourself or your whole life to that cause or that essence, then you live eternally and meaningfully. Of course, you don't have to worry about it when you live fully. You don't have to worry about what comes, next or after, because you don't have time to, or you don't have need to worry about what comes next. And that's my life goal. And another thing that, as a feminist, all the images, as a human beings, myself including, we always have some kind of images of our deity or goal of enlightenment, which I think is unfortunate. But we do, it's mostly anthropomorphic images, man-like images, male, gender-like images. And for me, that kind of images, especially in Christian tradition, is protecting, overpowering, omnipresent, judgmental, and sometimes punitive, all-powerful, conquering, heroic type of God, which actually doesn't, include the wholeness of God. Doesn't make us to understand to understand the wholeness of God. God is with us whenever there is inequalities and suffering and pains, including physical pains, injustice, oppression. And God suffers with us, cries with us, laughs with us. And if we are forced to have images that could be feminine or mother, the image of enlightened being or supernatural God or spiritual, highest spiritual being. So I will call to this suffering, loving mother, deity or God, and compassionate and understanding Kuan Yin Buddha, and the goddess within all of us. Thank you very much.
This will conclude our morning session, and lunchtime is you have your lunch prepared, so you can sit any place to have your lunch. And those who have not prepared, our members still prepare some fruit and pastry. And so please enjoy lunch, and I will come over to Chaplain. Thank you very much.
Just a general announcement. In the afternoon, we are honored to have among our speakers, one will be Professor Toshiro Shunko, who's the leader of Buddhist hospice movement in Japan. And we have a complete set of his talk in English, which we will distribute at 1 o'clock, just at the beginning of our session this afternoon. And so I wanted to just make that announcement. He is here, however, one of the few people in a suit and tie. So fresh from Japan, Professor Toshiro. As for the class, I think you already have copies of this. So Professor Toshiro Shunko. So he will be speaking this afternoon at 2 o'clock. And also for the class who are enrolled today, could we meet together over in the cultural hall in that direction at 12:15? So that'll give us about 20 minutes to kind of refresh ourselves and walk around. And maybe we can ask Professor Toshiro to join us for a while. Thank you very much. Is there anything else, Lekshay? Lekshay is our in charge. Oh, the evaluation. Oh, thank you. The evaluation. Don't mention that at the evaluation. If you could pass those in. Thank you.
Are you getting enough sleep?
Our first speaker this afternoon is Professor Byung-Won Lee. He is a professor of ethnomusicology at the University of Hawaii and has been such since 1974. He's done special research in Buddhist ritual performing arts. It's something we very seldom have a chance to hear about and learn about, so it's a wonderful way to open this afternoon's session. Although today he will be concentrating on Buddhist music and dance, giving us a hands-on experience in both, at the end of his presentation, he will be taking questions from all of you. So at this time, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Professor Byung-Won Lee. Professor Lee.
Good afternoon. I think you had very serious presentations regarding the dying and death in Buddhism this morning. So right after this lunch, I thought my topic would be rather light enough. So it will make a little bit more fun, I hope, than concentrating on the theological or philosophical matters in Buddhism. So my presentation will be basically informational rather than presenting any theory or theological matters of Buddhist music and dance in Korea. The various Buddhist rituals in Korea demonstrate the culmination of the Mahayana Buddhism with the practice of many different types of elaborate and complex sets of ritual music and dance. This kind of ritual performing art would help or intensify the religious experience in Korean Buddhist practice. So today, for approximately 30 minutes, I will present on the different kinds of Buddhist performing ritual art in Korea, Buddhist ritual performing art in Korea, and how they are used. Then after that, I will show you about 10-minute videotape presentation, which shows the music and dance performance within the actual ritual context later. For your information, I have this one-page handout sheet about the classification of Korean Buddhist performing art. I would like to make some general comment before getting into the specifics. In the Korean Buddhist performing art, we really don't have different sets or repertories for the rituals for dying and death or any other type of rituals. So the music and dance, also the ritual sequences are more or less set or fixed and standardized, but the detailed information regarding like a diseased person or some specific occasions, those could be specified within this standardized format. So in the overall ritual context, as far as my knowledge goes, there's no distinguishable sets of music and dance specifically designed for the dying and the death ceremonies or rituals or for something else. Same kind of music, same type of dances are used within in the different kinds of rituals. Secondly, my impression on the Korean Buddhist performing art has very close similarities with the Tibetan Lamaist practice. As far as I know, I didn't find any like ritual dances, Buddhist ritual dances in Chinese or Japanese Buddhist practice. But in Korea and in Tibetan Lamaism, they have a very elaborate and very sophisticated ritual dances. Also, another similarity is the use of a rather unusual outdoor band within the Buddhist rituals. In Tibet, they call it pasin, which consists of long trumpet, short trumpet, and conch shells, drums, cymbals, and double reed, like an oboe type of instrument. And exactly the same kind of instruments are used in Korean Buddhist rituals, which is called gyeongnaechi. So this outdoor band is quite similar between the Tibet and Korea. But again, I don't find the use of that kind of a band in Chinese or Japanese Buddhist ceremonies, although in other aspects of Buddhism, we have a lot of similarities and some historical relationships. The third point I want to make is that the Buddhist, in general, Buddhist chant, basically there are three types of Buddhist chant in Korean Buddhism, and Buddhist dances. All of them are very difficult to comprehend by lay people. And also some of the special performing arts are performed only by the trained priest in the temple. So in a way, there's a certain degree of specialization by the priest. And that may also prove one aspect of Mahayana Buddhism in Korea. So I would like to go the details one by one from this handout sheet. As I had said, there are three different types of Buddhist chants in Korea. And the first type is called so-called invocation, or is generally called as a yeonbul, or ancherisori, which means indoor chant. So this type of chant is exclusively used at the services held inside of the hall. And this kind of ancherisori or yeonbul or gyeong chanted, or could be chanted by almost any priest or even the worshippers, lay people at the temple. And musically, they are based on very simple syllabic style, or rather like the recitation with a few musical notes, very simple melody line, using only one or two or three at the most different pitches. So it is not typical musically to perform that kind of chant by any people. And one problem here is the text. This type of antilism or the indoor chant, the text of those chants are either based on phonetic transcription of Sanskrit or Chinese poetic form, which requires a very sophisticated level of the education to understand the deep meaning behind these chants. And so unless one studied very profoundly about the Buddhist scripture, sometimes even for myself, I studied the Buddhist chant. Many of these chant texts I don't understand the real meanings. So in that sense, I feel a little embarrassed. Musical is very simple and used indoor services, and this kind of chant is used at the daily services in the temple. So morning, evening, daily services. So I'll play just a short excerpt of this the unchained soul. So this is the kind of chant I think you may be able to hear at the daily services in this Taewansa temple as well. Next type of chant is so-called folk style Buddhist chant. This is the only type of Buddhist chant whose musical characteristic can attract commoners, like farmers, any lay people, because its style is very much like a folk song. Its melody styles or rhythmic patterns are quite similar to the traditional folk songs in Korea. And secondly, this is the only type of Buddhist chant which uses vernacular Korean language. So lay people can understand the content of the text. And the content is usually about the conversion to the Buddhist life, something like that. But the songs can be quite long. The length of the songs can be arranged by the performer with the given duration. It can be about 3 minutes, it can be about 10 minutes, depending upon how long the ritual should last. The singer or the chanter has a flexible the hand to decide the length of the chant. But the structure, the textual structure of the chant is more or less standardized. I'll play the folk song style of Buddhist chant in Korean language.
이 세상에 나올 적에 빈손 빈몸 들고 나와 무력 탐세 내질망 산인수신 전제고요 백년 탐험을 일조지니라 사흘이나 닦은 일전에 해이 보배되고 백년이나 탐험제물 하루마침 뒷거리요 봄수에 고르거라
This type of chant can be performed as a part of a special ceremony, but not at the daily services. Also, some of the mendicant priests, when they travel around to collect alms, some of the priests would be specialized in this kind of a chant. So they will sing at the door of the people in the village. The next type of music is rather unusual in a style. It is a combination of three different things with the different rhythms or melodies. So it's a kind of a presentation of three different elements simultaneously. And some scholars try to explain this relationship in terms of the theological basis, but I'll just give you the straightforward description about the style. It is the use of the outdoor band. It includes, it's a very rather boisterous, noisy outdoor band consisting of a double reed instrument like a Western oboe and long trumpet, conch shell, drums, and cymbals. So this band has a set of melodies. They will play that melody repeatedly. The melody is rather long. It's a kind of a cyclical melody phrase, rather long, consisting of more than 20 cycles of the patterns. Then the musicians, the instrumentalists would play the same tune continuously. Then at the same time, group of priests would perform either special kind of chant called pompe or the indoor style chant, antivisary. But the melody of the chant is quite different from the instrumental melody. So it is the presentation of the two different melodies simultaneously. And there's no musical consideration in terms of like a harmony or counterpoint. It's just the presentation of two different elements. And third, there will be ritual dances dancing to this kind of instrumental ensemble and chant. The dance movement seems to conform to the rhythm of the band, but they don't conform to the rhythm of the chant. So it is a rather interesting combination of presenting three different things: instrumental music, different chant with a different melody, and dance simultaneously. Later, you will be able to see the performance of these three different elements with the video tape, but I'll play the short example of this performance to give you some better idea of the sound quality. in Korean Buddhist rituals, they have a term for this kind of performance, for the combination of 3 different things. It's called yoja. I don't think I gave you the name on the sheet, but the priest usually refer or use the term as yoja, Y-O-J-A-P. That means the performance of the gyeongnaechi, the instrumental ensemble, with one long style compare the chant or recitative chant, then performing a ritual dance. The last style of the chant is called pompe. This is the same Chinese characters as the Chinese fanbei, or fanbei if you know the Chinese chant, the Buddhist chant. Or in Japan, it used to be called as bombai. But since 11th century AD, the Japanese bombai has been changed to shomyo. So nowadays, the shomyo is the term to indicate some specific chant in Japanese Buddhism. But historically, the Chinese fanbei or Korean pompe or Japanese the shomyo had a very close link until the 10th century AD. And this kind of relationship has been described by Jigaku Daishi Ennin in the Japanese priest in the 9th century in his diary while he was traveling Tang China twice during the 9th century. In Korean pompe, they developed into rather interesting styles. Rather than performing one fixed composition of each pompe pieces, they have a very flexible arrangement to shorten or lengthen the pompe chant length. So what one like a X pompe, like one specific pompe, they can perform in more than 6 different ways. And in each case, some of the melodic or musical elements may be identical, but some of them could be very different. So this kind of flexible arrangement is always decided by the head priest in the chanting circle, also in consideration with the length of the given rituals. So, for example, if we have one memorial service after 49th day memorial service after the death, that ceremony may take about 3-4 hours. Or the family of the deceased may want to have a 1-day ceremony, or it could last 2 days. But the elements or sequences required in the ritual is fixed. The scriptures, kind of scriptures to be recited, what kind of things to be presented are all fixed. But the pompe is the only the element that can determine the flexible length or duration of the ritual. So in pompe, they have developed 2 different styles. One is called hosori, and the other one is called chisori. Hosori is shorter, simpler chant, but chisori is longer, more elaborate and more complicated chant. And the basic difference is that they use basically the same text, same pompe text, but performing in different musical styles. When they perform in the hosori style, they will perform always the same way. It's the kind of a fixed musically. But when it is performed in chisori style, the musical form is very flexible. It can last one pompe, chisori pompe, may last 7 minutes, or it can be stretched out to about 40 minutes for the same text. And so there's a very elaborate way of arranging this kind of discrete duration of the pompe performance. And that, I think the chisori pompe is rather unique, the Buddhist chant style, practiced in Korean Buddhist ceremonies. So I don't, compared to the Chinese or Japanese Buddhist ceremonies, I don't see this kind of flexible the chant style, because if you have one chant that has fixed, literally fixed, and the duration is fixed. But like even in Catholics, I think when they have a special mass, they use different set of chant to match the grandiose scale of the ritual, as well as to match the required longer duration of the ceremony. So in a way, it has some similarities with the Catholic the Mass. So let me give you just a short excerpt of this chisori pompe. It starts with the very simple recitative style, and angelic style. Then after that, it starts with a very low-pitched, very slow moving, almost a free rhythm like chant. I think you will be able to see the performance of this chisori pompe later with the video tape. Tape recorder is not strong enough to pull this old tape, so it's wobbles. So rather than playing the tape, I will show you the chisori performance with the video tape, in which they perform rather simple type of chisori, but still you can hear and see the performance. The video tape I'm going to show you is about the death. This is rather interesting. For average Koreans, the death rituals have a very strong influence from either Confucianism or Taoism or shamanism. But this kind of the rituals sometimes performed at the Buddhist temple. So it is a kind of mixture of 2-3 different types of religions and presenting in some specific locations. So this particular ritual was the 2 years after the death. That is the very important death ritual in terms of the Taoism or Confucianism. And until that time, the direct families have a lot of taboos to observe. So after that ritual is over, after 2 years, the ritual is over, then they can change the clothes from the usual very simple clothes. They identify themselves as a family, direct family of deceased. And then they will have just simple ceremonies every year after that. but the second year after that is a very important moment for the families. So this particular ritual was taken place in commemoration of the second year of the death of one of the famous Korean traditional musicians. Whose name is Kim Jung-pa. She was so-called in the national treasure, national cultural treasure, designated by the South Korean government with her skill and preservation and musicianship of performing one particular type of instrument or a particular type of musical style. So after her death, her students, unfortunately, she didn't have any direct families. Her husband passed away much earlier, and they didn't have a child. So one of her disciples became like an adopted daughter and continuing her tradition. And she was also designated as the person who will continue that national cultural traditions designated by the government. So she and other students got together. They contributed some funds, then decided to have a very large-scale one-day ceremony in commemoration of their teachers. So it was a really grand-scale Buddhist ceremony. The first segment would be the presentation of yoja, which consists of the instrumental ensemble and Buddhist chant. In this case, they are performing the recitation style of chant, but the text of the chant is Sanskrit, so it is very difficult to understand the meaning for lay people. And then there is ritual dance. Two priests
will give certain portions of Professor Tashiro's paper, and then at the end of their presentation, they will remain here at the podium. And Reverend Fritz Ritchell, who is chaplain at Hospice Hawaii, Allison Brennan and Puki Igeuchi, who are graduate students at the UH Department of Religion, will come forward and begin the discussion and questioning of Professor Tashiro. So at this time, I ask Professor Tashiro and Reverend Ito, please, to come forward.
Do all of you have copies of Professor Tashiro's paper? No. Anybody who doesn't, you're... Oh, it's your text.
Good afternoon. My name is Shuko Tashiro at Toho University. I'm glad to see you. 私は英語音楽者をやりますので、彼に私のノートをこれから読んでいただきます。
I cannot speak English sufficiently, and therefore I'll have Reverend will read the presentation. At this time, what we'll do is I think you all have a copy of the presentation, and we don't have enough time, and so I will try to serve as Professor Tashiro's voice and read this manuscript together with you. We will cut out certain sections, and I'll let you know when we are going to be skipping on to the next section. I'd like to present two subjects to you for today's discussion. The first subject concerns the ethics of life. Medical techniques and research have developed so rapidly that human life is now treated as an object. Thus, the dignity of human life becomes impaired. Modern medicine is now tied up with economics and has essentially developed into big business. As a result, we have ethical problems related to medicine. We can see these problems, for example, in the manipulation of human genes and the buying and selling of human organs done in the name of medical therapy. We also see this problem through the manipulation of human existence by human growth hormones, surrogate motherhood, sperm banks, human egg donations, the preservation of human eggs in ice storage, and the cloning of human sperm. How much can man invade the sanctity of human life? The second subject I would like to discuss is the acceptance of death and our spiritual support of terminally ill patients. In today's society, there are an increasing number of aged people. How can we accept the reality of growing old? How can we accept death? How can terminally ill patients with cancer and AIDS accept death? How can they find a way to live until their last moments of life in this world? How can they realize fulfillment in their lives? And finally, how do we spiritually support the terminally ill? These problems cannot be solved by medicine and other sciences. Instead, we have to think about these subjects from the point of view of a universal religion. Modern science doesn't seem to be able to present appropriate answers to these problems. However, Asian philosophy offers ways to solve these problems. There are a number of crucial problems that we need to confront, including environmental issues, nuclear concerns, and others that fundamentally challenge human life itself. These are subjects that all of us need to be concerned with in our transition from this century to the next century. The ethics of life, brain death, and organ transplants. When I visited Brazil last year, I read an astonishing newspaper headline. The headline in the São Paulo News, July 19, 1993, read, "Human heart sold for $80,000, illicit trafficking of infant organs." A headline in Japan's Asahi Shimbun, April 18, 1993, read, "Honduran President orders investigation. 600 children missing, kidnapped for human organs." In Asian countries, something else happened. According to a headline in the Chunichi Shimbun, January 25, 1993, in China, pardoned death row inmates account for the largest number of human organ donors, 5,000 transplants a year. In India and in the Philippines, it is said that trafficking in human organs is an everyday event. These events are caused not only because there aren't strong laws in these countries, but also because of poverty. Rich people in developed countries buy human organs through the sacrifice of others, attempting to prolong their lives because of their own egocentric cravings. I also heard about a group tour of people seeking human organs in India and in the Philippines. At this point, I'd like to ask the question, in what way do we think of our lives and the lives of others? At this point, we'll skip to page 2, towards the bottom. Buddhism and the ethics of life. Under heaven and above the earth, I alone am more noble. Next, I would like to express my thoughts on life through Buddhist teachings in terms of Eastern philosophy. It is written that as soon as Shakyamuni Buddha was born, he walked 7 steps and said, "Under the heaven and above the earth, I alone am noble." Everybody knows that a newborn baby at birth cannot walk and talk. However, the biographies of the Buddha and other famous Buddhist teachers were written after their deaths. Essentially, biographies convey philosophies. Therefore, these biographies were written to teach followers the philosophies of each of these masters. Therefore, I think a good starting point for learning Buddhism is the story of the Buddha's birth. To clarify this point, I'd like to tell the following story. Once I formed a study group named Thinking of Life Through Death. Its members were physicians, nurses, social workers, ministers, cancer patients, elderly people, family members of cancer patients, and those caring for the elderly. One day after our monthly meeting, a woman in the group gave me a book she wrote called Note of Mamma. Mamma is a Latin word which means breast. This woman once had surgery for breast cancer. She wrote about her days of anxiety, from the day she found a tumor on her breast, to her hospitalization, her operation, and the day she was finally discharged from the hospital. She also wrote about her thoughts when she was discharged from the hospital. About that day, she wrote, "When I walked out the front door of the hospital, I saw radiant and beautiful scenery, brilliant scenery. The houses, streets, and trees were brilliant. It was indescribable. The word beautiful doesn't even come close to explaining it. The hospital and the route to her house were familiar to her. Before being hospitalized, she was not moved at all by such scenery." She also wrote, "I am full of love for even the weeds which grow between cracks in the sidewalk." Another person who had an operation for colon cancer told me about her experiences. She said, "In my kitchen, I often saw cockroaches. Whenever I saw them, I reflexively took off one of my slippers and tried to hit them. However, after being discharged from the hospital, I don't know why, but I could not hit those cockroaches anymore." What do you hear from these people's experiences? I think their experiences tell us about Asian people's view towards life. If one can survive a life or death experience, then that person will be able to respect the life of useless weeds and insects, perhaps even feeling love for them. A life is life. Life does not exist for human beings. Man is not the Lord of all creation. All life was created equally. Therefore, Buddhism teaches us not to kill. This is the foundation of Buddhism. The Buddha's birth story says Shakyamuni made the pronouncement, "Under the heaven and above the earth, I alone am noble." This is a declaration that life is precious. However, we cannot live without taking the lives of others. Consequently, before meals, Buddhists put their hands together and say, "Itadakimasu," which means I respectfully receive the lives of others. To have this mind of empathy means putting maximum effort towards avoiding taking another's life. Surviving a life or death situation helps a person understand other people's pain. Detachment from judging people's lives. As I mentioned before, all creation is equal. In other words, we cannot measure life in terms of one life being superior to another. In Buddhism, there is the teaching of detachment from being and non-being. This is another way of thinking about not being swayed by the negation caused by our constant judgments. If we are so swayed, we will always compare ourselves with others and suffer from feelings of inferiority or superiority, while our minds drift between the two. As a result, we cannot be radiant as we are. Moreover, if we are swayed by these judgments, we will always try to classify the lives of others. Consequently, we discriminate by judging them against our own value system. For example, the study group which I mentioned before has a volunteer counseling project called Spiritual Counseling for the Elderly and Sick, co-sponsored by the Higashihonganji Youth Group in Nagoya. One day at a staff conference, a volunteer counselor presented a problem. He said an elderly woman who he visited was bedridden. She said repeatedly, "I want to die, I want to die." When I heard this the first time, I thought she was just trying to get the attention of family members. But when I listened carefully to what she said, I began to understand her true feelings. She said to me, "I have to be in bed all the time. I am useless as a human being and as a family member. I am frustrated by being in bed. I think this shouldn't have occurred to me. I am seen as an obstacle to my son. My son's wife looks at me with gloomy eyes. Recently, even my grandchildren make fun of me. Therefore, I want to die." She really wants to die. How should I respond to her? Man is measured in economic terms in today's society. We tend to measure human life on this economic scale. When one's life measures up, we think the person is useful. When a person's life does not meet that standard, we think the person is useless. We rationalize life. We try to eliminate waste. We try to cut that which is not useful. The Nazis in Germany had a saying, "Total elimination of non-value life." This meant committing genocide of the mentally and physically disabled. We in our economic-centered society are somewhat similar to the Nazis in this respect. The person who suffers because of an unwanted condition and the people around him who judge him based on usefulness are in a similar situation. This kind of situation is modern society's pitfall. But we should not hold one view as absolute. For example, a child who scores straight A's in school does not guarantee he is an A student in everything. On the other hand, many F's in school don't mean a child is an F student in everything. Even he who gets many F's in school, he may have talent and ability in other fields. In other words, if you hold one scale as being absolute, you won't see beyond your own self-created world. The value of human beings cannot be measured in terms of meeting demands or not meeting demands. The value of human beings can be seen from various views that sometimes we don't see. I'm not exaggerating when I say that being human has deep meaning and value. I remember what the mother of a severely disabled child once wrote. She expressed how she learned from her child even though the child couldn't move or speak at all. The mother learned that her child's existence epitomized how man does not live by his own power, but lives through the support of others. The mother, who died of cancer at the age of 41, had written some very personal notes to her children. In a note to her disabled daughter, she wrote of being really happy and fulfilled despite that child's disabilities. The mother learned a big lesson from this disabled child, who might be judged as one who does not meet the demands of our economic-centered society. The mother was able to find meaning in her life through the existence of this disabled child. The lesson she learned warns modern people of holding on to rationalistic views. The people who hold rationalistic views tend to see the terminally ill as useless because they see that there is no hope for them to be cured. Besides, they will die soon anyway. The people who hold these rationalistic views tend to see people who are dying in terms of being an object of medical treatment. They see human organs as material to be recycled. Rationalists think that they can take out organs from a terminal patient because he is going to die anyway. Moreover, they rank the people who they think deserve to get transplants according to a scale of who is useful or not useful. I think there is an impending crisis on the issue of organ transplants. I think this rationalistic view will take advantage of politically weak people serving only to discriminate against life itself, naturalists and life. Fundamental to the thinking of Asian people is the concept of naturally accepting life as it comes. Within this huge universe, we should have a feeling of reverence towards the universe. We should leave ourselves to the laws of the universe. When we contrast ourselves with the universe, we see just how foolish we are. Considering this, along with man's conceited knowledge, do we really have the right to invade the providence of nature? When destroying nature, we must be ready to receive some sort of retaliation. The same thing happens when we talk about life. After throwing the natural order of things into disorder, we must expect retaliation. There are a lot of things which we can not know based on science. Therefore, I think that we must have a prudent attitude toward medical therapy, human genes, and the manipulation of human sperm and eggs. Rather than focusing on the life sciences, we should think about the way we live. The way we live is based on egocentricity. We fulfill our desires through the sacrifice of others. Controlling our own egocentricity is our problem. I urge you to be aware of the powerlessness of human beings. I encourage you to live humbly within the truth of the universe and to live in a way that leaves everything to the laws of the universe. We are not born into this world through our own power and through our own will. If one says that he was born into this world by his own power and will, I would like to meet such a person. We know there is no such person in this world. Our birth is the result of our father and mother, grandfather and grandmother, and so forth. Like this, we were born into this world as only one aspect of an eternal and immeasurable chain of causes and conditions. Death is the same thing as birth. Because death occurs beyond our wishes, we say things like it was an unexpected death or sudden death. Death is really just one aspect of a continuous chain of causes and conditions. I can say the same thing about my life. From the time of my birth, my life has been a continuation of unexpected events. Nothing has gone along with my wishes. If my life had gone along with my wishes, I would have had an easier time. Likewise, meeting you today is also an event which I could not really control. It was the result of causes and conditions, or goen in Japanese. If we reflect upon our existence carefully, we realize that we are alive because of an incomprehensibly huge universe that goes beyond our egocentricity. We must abandon our small egocentric minds and awaken to the vastness of the universe. The easiest way to live without mental stress is to live and die naturally. This kind of lifestyle does not expect another person to die in order to get organs for prolonging life. Naturalness in terms of detachment from being and non-being is the stance we need in order to escape the measures we use to judge life. In other words, it is this stance that frees us from deciding what is useful, what isn't useful, what a long life is, and what a long life isn't. One will never be satisfied despite receiving an innumerable number of heart transplants. One who lives 150 years may say something like, I was planning to live to be 200 years old after receiving one more heart transplant, but I have to die at 150 years old. This is really against my wishes and desires. I know that heart transplant surgery is meaningful under certain conditions. However, if we do not reflect on or question the nature of our lives, we cannot find true satisfaction. In Buddhism, living naturally is called Jinen Honi. That means naturalness through the work of the vow of Tathagata. This represents the transcendence of egocentricity. The acceptance of the acceptance of death, the terminally ill, and support groups. The acceptance of death and the Vihara movement. Europe, America, and Japan are seeing the population of its elderly members rapidly increasing. Also, the number of cancer and AIDS patients is also rapidly increasing. In these societies, how can we accept aging and death? How can we transcend the reality of aging and death? Moreover, how can we help and relate to the elderly and to the terminally ill people? These questions are important tasks for us to think about. Some people say they challenge the aging process and death. But can we really beat aging and death? I do not think so. We can overcome death because we must grow. We cannot overcome death because we must grow old and die. If you have the idea that you can somehow beat aging or death, you will always fail. Whatever you think, in the end, you must die. However, by not struggling with aging and death, you will learn acceptance and peace. The fundamental task of Buddhism is realizing how to accept and transcend birth, old age, sickness, and death. This task must be accomplished not by seeking miracles. It is accomplished by eliminating the illusion which causes suffering, thereby awakening us to the truth. Many of our predecessors have transcended suffering caused by birth, old age, sickness, and death. In Christian society, the place where terminally ill patients are cared for is called a hospice. In Indian society, there were also such places as far back as 3,000 years ago. In the Buddhist Sangha in India, there were facilities called Mujoin, or Impermanence Hall, and Nehanin, or Nirvana Hall. In Japan, there were also such facilities. There were Yobyoin, or hospitals, Seiyakuin, or a facility which dispenses medicine, Hidennin, or a facility for poor people, and Keidennin, or schools. These facilities were operated by members of traditional Buddhist sects. However, early in the 19th century, Western medicine was introduced in Japan. At the same time, Buddhist priests began emphasizing traditional rituals. Consequently, those care facilities were closed down. To reopen them, our Vihara movement began. In other words, our Vihara movement is a support group for the terminally ill in the view of Buddhist teachings. Fundamentally, the values of Japanese people are based on Buddhist teachings. Consequently, our movement is finding a growing acceptance by many people. Impermanence and non-ego. Next, I would like to talk about transcending death from the perspective of Orthodox Buddhism. Buddha said everything is impermanent. That means everything is constantly changing. For example, man has to die. This is true. However, there is one way in which you won't die, which I will teach you today. I learned this from a student in my class. One day, this student visited my office, bringing with him what he said was an interesting book. He opened the book to a page with the words, "The Way of Not Dying." On the corner of the same page, it said, "See the next page." On the next page, it said, "Not to be born." That's right. The way of not dying is not to be born, but you are too late because you are already dead. Living beings inevitably perish. However, we really do not understand this fact. We know that others will die, but don't acknowledge the inevitability of our own deaths. For example, let's consider the inevitability of aging. I am disappointed when I see my face in the mirror. I think I am young, but when I see my white hair and my wrinkles, I look older than I think. In my thoughts, I am always young. This thought is called illusion in Buddhism. However, seeing myself in the mirror is fact. This fact is called reality in Buddhism. In my case, the gap between illusion and reality is really the suffering caused by aging. However, appreciating this reality, that is, to see it as it is, and realizing that I've been getting old since I was born, I am able to accept aging. In other words, when I am aware of the reality that it is natural to grow old, the illusion which causes suffering is swept away. Then I am able to accept the reality of growing old. Sickness is the same thing. In our minds, we think that health is natural. Therefore, when we become sick, we ask, "Why me?" Then we suffer. However, when we are in the hospital and realize that we experience both health and sickness in the course of our lives because we are living beings, then we are able to accept sickness as a natural phenomenon and as an aspect of living. Then we can accept our condition and cooperate with the physicians who are treating us. Death is the same way. We think we don't want to die, therefore we suffer. It is natural for all living beings to die. When we encounter the death of a loved one, we see the fact that all living things are subject to dying. Thus, when we clearly see the facts of birth, old age, sickness, and death, the illusion which causes suffering is cleared away. Then we can naturally accept our birth, old age, sickness, and death as they are. Also, the Buddha taught that everything is not mine, or all subjects are non-ego. We take thoughts about everything, including ourselves, and turn them into something like our own possessions. What I want to say here is that we see life itself as a possession we somehow own. However, as I mentioned before, both birth and death are events which are beyond our control. It is really a state of being kunyoe, or not liberated. When we try to change this situation, we create suffering for ourselves. One of my friends wrote a book entitled "The Way to Die Well." One day in a meeting with him, I asked, "Can you die well?" He couldn't provide a good answer. Even if you die well, you will be so preoccupied about whether you are dying a good or bad death that you will not be able to die well. Nobody wants to be in a position of lying in bed forever. Nobody wants to get Alzheimer's disease. Those are examples of how life never seems to go along with our wishes. We do not have to die well. If you feel pain, you can say, "Ouch." If you are suffering, you can say, "I hurt." If death comes, it is all right that you die just as you are. If you think of dying in this way, you can be at peace as a result. This is the world of naturalness through the vow of the Tathagata, as I mentioned before. As soon as you detach yourself from the scale in your mind that judges what is good and bad, you will be able to live peacefully. We will skip to the next page, page 7. Considering life through death. Modern people make talking about death a taboo. Consequently, because death is a taboo subject, it causes fear and anxiety. As I already told you, modern people seek to transcend death in the wrong ways. By seeking not to beat death, but to accept it, we confront death, birth, and death. When we observe carefully, we will be awakened to the realities of life. Thus we can transcend birth and death. In other words, when we face up to the reality of death, we are able to understand the meaning of life. She was a Sitchin Buddhist. She wrote the following. Cancer. When one is told you have cancer, one will surely associate it with death. At the present time, the study of medicine is so advanced, we find it hard to accept getting sick. So we also find it hard to face up to death. I forgot that it is natural to die at any time, so I became overly confident about life. Thanks. My overconfidence was broken to pieces by my cancer. This disease was a gift that made me think that it can't be helped. Thanks, okage-sama de. Thanks, okage-sama de. Little by little, I am able to see my foolishness. Here's another poem she wrote. 46 years old. The problem of death does not begin now. It began when I was born. The problem has been thrown to a 9-year-old boy with an adorable but pale face, pushing his own cart of intravenous medicine. The problem has been thrown to the several intravenous tubes which are attached to a baby who is embraced in a mother's arms but who does not have the strength to suck her mother's nipple. Thinking about my age, 46 years old, I now know I am grateful. When we face up to death, we can marvelously realize the feeling of gratefulness in the here and now, even though it is reasonable to think that we may die any time. For us, death started from the time of birth. It is not unreasonable even for infants or children at the age of 9 to die. When I look at my own age, I realize I am already 42 years old. When you see your own death, you will reflect upon your life in the past. To my knowledge, all terminal patients who learn Shin Buddhism have tears of gratefulness for their lives. Moreover, when you can see your own death, your future will change. If you are aware of impermanence, your lifestyle will change. You won't waste your time, even 1 minute of it. If you realize that your body may not exist tomorrow, you will be a person who lives in the now. It means that you live now until the moment of your death. Even at the end of your life, there is the continuation of the moment, and this moment is perfect. On this point, I would like to share with you poems which were written by the woman I mentioned. Gun. Gun is the Japanese word for cancer. My cancer was the starter's gun for the race named Reflection on My Life. Now I start my new life. When I became aware of my death, life more than ever rose up to the surface of my consciousness. As opposites come together, peace of mind is marvelously brought to me. We should not delay thinking about the problem of death until the time death strikes. Now, at this moment, we need to think about it. A priest in the 12th century named Shindan, who was awakened to Shin, true Buddhism, called the state of the here and now, the right assurance of this world. Instead of making the subject of death taboo, we need to think about it so that we can find meaning in our lives now. To think deeply of death is to live a fulfilling life. Let us consider this paradox together.
Thank you.
We will now ask the question that should come forward.
I want to thank Professor Toshiro for this wealth of information and the stimulation that he's provided to us, and really applaud you for your work that you're doing in Japan. It sounds like really a major kind of attitudinal change in many ways, and I hope that you're very successful in that kind of endeavor. I'm with hospice. I'm a chaplain with Hospice Hawaii. I will ask a couple of questions maybe from that perspective, Professor Toshiro. One of the dominant things in my experience with hospice in its concern is the the experience of pain and the control of pain and the management of pain. My question has to do with the function of pain. How does pain function? I understand also that within the Buddhist perspective, there is a sense in which one wants to really appreciate fully the present moment, the here and now, as if each moment has that possibility of fullness and of wealth to it. So most simply then, my question is, what role does pain have in the encouragement for the appreciation of living in the here and in the now?
痛みということについてですけれども、私たちが問題する痛みというのは心の痛みですね。一体的な痛みはペインクリニックの方のお仕事、お医者さんのお仕事になるんですね。で、心の痛みということなんですけども、我々はその今彼がおっしゃったように今を生きる、つまり死の瞬間まで今を生きる。来世があるからあなたの命はもうそれでしまいでもいいでしょうなんてことはですね、がんの患者さんには言えないわけでして、死を迎えた人には言えないわけでして、常に死の瞬間まで今を生きる。しかしその今というのは時間空間の一点の今ではないわけです。昨日も今、今日も今、いつも今なんですね。で、今の連続が死の瞬間まで続くという、そういう非常に積極的な死の受け止め方だと思います。
Regarding pain, I think that we can regard it from two different aspects. One would be physical pain, and physical pain could be cured by the support that we receive from medicine, from facilities, as well as the actual medicine that we take. And so what we concern ourselves more with is the pain that is spiritual or mental. And in that regard, the concept of living now is very important. Living now, every moment, living now and enjoying every moment up until the moment of our death. So therefore, it is not to say to the dying patient that you are dying and therefore you might as well give up, or it's no use really thinking about or trying to cure the pain. It is to be able to even encourage in the person who's close to death how the importance of enjoying or living now. And that now is of course not the kind of now that is in the context of, say, space and time. It is the ever-present now, the now that continues every moment from this moment until the moment of our death.
I'd like to kind of continue with that question, but emphasize the physical pain aspect of it. If all suffering, physical and emotional or spiritual suffering, is caused karmically, then can one interpret hospice, a large aspect of which is pain control, as an interference of working out past karma?
過去の業によってその痛みを取ることは過去の業をですね、報いるということに反するんじゃないかというふうなご質問だろうと思うんですけども、業という言葉の概念が若干彼女と私たち違うのですね。例えばこういう例を考えてください。障害を持ったお子さん人がいらっしゃる。その時に、それは過去の業だから障害を持って生まれてきたんだというふうに考えるのはこれやっぱりおかしいですね。つまり、そこには何らその因果関係はないわけですね。で、肉体的な痛みを引き受けるということは、その過去に何か悪いことをしたから肉体的な痛みが自分に起こってきたということではないわけですね。むしろ業というのはその現実を受容していく原理ですから、 そういうその因果関係のないところで、それを業という考え方に結びつけて考えるのは私は少し疑問になりますね。それで、むしろその、痛みがあるというのは全くありのままに痛みがあるということですから、それをそのような形でですね、ペインクリニックやっても、とてもおかしくはない。
Regarding that question, I think that there is maybe a slight problem in how we understand the concept of karma. And my understanding would be that karma is not just simply cause and effect, and therefore I'm suffering now because of something that I did wrong in the past. If we were to look at an example of a physically challenged or physically handicapped child, and that child was born that way, then we can see that that handicap or that physical difficulty was not caused because of something the child did in the past. And therefore, we do not feel that it is important. Well, it is a question of trying to work out one's past karma through experiencing pain. That pain that is felt by the patient in a hospice is not necessarily because of any past actions. And therefore, pain is something that is natural. It can happen to anyone. It does not depend on one's past, whether one experiences pain or not. And so that we should deal with pain immediately and adequately, as adequately as we can.
My question is very simple. What do you think, when is the point of death? It seems to me in Japanese culture that in society today that there is brain death, all technology in different cultures, different death. I would like to hear your opinion about when, in what point do you say it's death?
死の瞬間、そのポイントっていうのはですね、私は、どこからが死で、どの時点が死だということは明確には言えないと思うんですね。決めることはできないと思います。例えば今、日本では心臓が止まり、呼吸が、止まり、瞳孔が開く状態を死と判定して決めておりますけれども、その心臓が止まってもまだ生きている細胞があるんですね。例えば髪の毛だとか爪だとかですね。そうすると死っていうのはその一つのプロセス、点ではなくてプロセスであるわけですね。それを過去に日本ではその心臓死で合意が取れて、そしてその時点を死としているわけですね。アメリカ社会ですと、脳死という時点で合意が取れて、それを死としているわけですね。それはだからあくまでその新融合プロセスの一点をそれぞれコンセンサスを取って、死と決めているだけだと私は思いますね。だからそういう意味でその死の瞬間を明確に決めるということはですね、はっきり決められないんじゃないかと思います。もし完全に死というならば全部の体がのものが腐った状態だと思います。
The question is regarding the moment of death. And I think that it is a question which is very difficult and perhaps impossible to make clear. For instance, in a dying patient, we can say that when the heart stops, when breathing stops, that person is dead. But then there are still organs, there are still functions of the body that keep living. For instance, one's hair continues to grow, one's nails, fingernails continue to grow and so forth. And therefore, I consider death to be a process. It's not at one moment that life dies. In America, in the United States, it's pretty much been decided that the death of the brain death, is the moment of death. In Japan, we consider the heart stopping as the moment of death. But these are all just decisions that are made by people getting together, forming a consensus and so forth. And perhaps the only way that we can actually say that death has completely occurred is when a body decays completely. That's the only time that all functions cease completely.
Can I relate to yeah. Okay, related to the pointer that I think Professor Tashiro's made it clear that he emphasized the process of that. And in recent society, there are, in America, and also in Japan, that there are lots of popular book about how to die. And then what is the definition that Professor Tashiro would give for peaceful death? And we have been learning from other professors about letting go, how Amida Buddha, you're connected to Amida Buddha with the 5-color string, and that's a manifestation of you, the Amida leading you to the Pure Land. Can you give comments on that?
大変いい質問をいただきました。
Very good question.
上手な死に方とか美しく老いるっていうことですけど、皆さん上手に死ねますか？美しく老いることができますか？
We talk about a good way of dying or a beautiful way of dying, but do you think that you can experience that in your lives or in your life and death?
生はプラス死はマイナスとか、上手に死ぬとか下手に死ぬ、そのような物差しを持って、そしてそれで上手に死のうというふうに考えても、それは人間の力では可能ではないわけですね。
We measure life in terms of saying that life is positive, life is good, death is negative, death is bad, and the length of life is good, and so forth. But these are all just ways that we look at life and death.
今寝たきりになったり、今がんになっている人は自分で好き好んで、そうなっているのではないんです。
A person who is suffering from cancer, a person who is terminally ill, that person did not decide that this is what is going to happen to him. It was not his decision.
それも仏教で言えば一つのご縁なんですね。
In Buddhism, we call this a condition that we've received.
頭でっかちになった近代人は命を所有化しております。
Modern people today have a tendency to regard life as a commodity.
先ほどのお話で言いましたように、私たちは自分の力で生まれてきたわけでもないし、自分で思い通りに死んでいけるわけでもないです。
Earlier in the presentation, I said that birth is not something that we are able to bring about ourselves, and likewise, death is also something which is beyond our control.
この中で誰か自分の力で生まれたとか、自分の意思で生まれたという人があったらお会いしたいです。
If there is someone here that can say that he or she was born through his own powers, then I would like to talk to that person.
いくら上手に死のうと思っていても交通事故で死ぬかもしれませんよ。
No matter how much we try to say plan our death to make it a peaceful death or a good death, that there is also the possibility that as we leave here today, we can get into an accident and die.
この出会いだって思いがけない出会いです。
This encounter, this meeting that we're having today is also something that is beyond our control.
私は42歳ですが、この42年間、何一つ生まれてから42年間思い通りになったことはありません。
I am now 42 years old, but there is nothing in my life that I can say happened exactly as I had planned.
思い通りになったらもっと左打ちは、日本で左打ちはと言いますけれども、楽に生きています。
If life was so easy, then I would be able to just take a pen and sit in my living room and enjoy life without working hard.
思い通りにならないからアクセルと暮らしています。
Because life doesn't go as we wish, life is filled with difficulties.
そうしますと誕生も死も出会いも思いを超えたものです。大きな思いを超えたものに私たちは生かされ支えられていると言えますね。
Therefore, life and death are beyond our control. Life itself is totally beyond our control. It is something that we have received. It is a gift that we have received.
皆さんは中国の西遊記というお話を知ってますか？西遊記、孫悟空。
Are you familiar with the famous Chinese story about Sayuki? I forgot how it's called in Chinese. No, Sayuki. About
孫
The monkey Songoku, or in Japanese called Songoku.
孫悟空が金トムに乗って3階をへめぐり回っても